Fox News alert now. The Pentagon set to withdraw, get this, thousands of U.S. troops from Afghanistan. This after 7 rounds of talks as a proposed deal with the Taliban to end the war. What about the standing army, the standing government of Afghanistan? Are they even in these talks? Joining us now is former Green Beret commander who served in Afghanistan, a member of the House Armed Services Committee out of Florida, Congressman Mike Waltz. Congressman Waltz, is this good news or bad news?
Well, look, Brian, I have no problem with entering into a deal, but so far, I don't like this deal. I think this is a bad deal. The Taliban have basically given us a bunch of promises. They promised to enter into a ceasefire, yet they're still bombing children in Kabul. They promised to talk to the Afghan government, but they haven't done that yet. And most importantly, they've promised to keep al-Qaeda and ISIS at bay. And even if you believe that promise, which I don't, how do they have the capability that thousands of U.S. troops and a 300,000-man Afghan army have struggled to do over the last 18 years? So I understand the president's frustration. Too hard, too long, too expensive. But at the end of the day, these troops are an insurance policy at keeping half the world's terrorist organizations at bay. And we cannot have a situation with what President Obama did, where he just tried to wish the war away in Iraq, pulled our troops out, and then we ended up with ISIS and the entire catastrophe that has been Syria.
We're not rebuilding Afghanistan. We're stopping terror organizations from taking root while getting intelligence on the ground and taking them out. 22 different terror groups that have already been located and identified in Afghanistan. It would be devastating for us to just leave it to China, Russia, and Iran. Let's move on to another challenge. North Korea.
Sure.
They launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles on Thursday, similar to projectiles launched earlier this week. The president says he's not concerned they weren't included in a treaty agreement, but it is a violation of a UN deal.
Yeah, so I completely supported the president in the first couple of engagements and sit-downs. You know, it was out-of-the-box thinking. It was something different than all of these other administrations that had failed. But enough is enough at this point. You know, the North Koreans have not declared their nuclear sites. They are not taking the steps that they promised to do. What got them to the table in the first place was a full maximum pressure campaign. The thing the North Koreans care about the most is their wallet and their back pocket and their regime survival. And I think we need to fully resume that maximum pressure campaign until they start stepping up to the plate.
Rocket Man doesn't understand he's blowing the deal of a lifetime. The president took tremendous risks for him.
It's a huge opportunity.
And it's on him. Let his people continue to starve if this continues.
And the Chinese, I think the Chinese are behind this too, Brian, in terms of ramping up that pressure because of the pressure the president's putting on them.
On them big time. Next, Tulsi Gabbard stands out. She had the guts to take on foreign policy. Nobody else would. She did fight in the war, to her great credit. But when she said this about the president, well, I want you to listen with me and then comment.
Not only have we not gone after al-Qaeda, who is stronger today than they were in 9/11, our president is supporting al-Qaeda.
His support and alliance with Saudi Arabia, that is both providing direct and indirect support directly to al-Qaeda.
He's directly supporting al-Qaeda, Saudi Arabia, where we've had an alliance with since the 1920s?
Yeah, well, tell that to Hamza bin Laden, Osama bin Laden's son, who our forces just killed, the heir apparent to al-Qaeda. So that, you know, again, back to my point, the president has kept our foot and our military's foot on these terrorist groups' neck. My point previously in talking about Afghanistan is we have to keep the pressure on. So he's absolutely gone after al-Qaeda. We destroyed the ISIS caliphate, but the movements are not destroyed, and that's where we have to keep up the pressure. Look, I respect her service, but for reasons that I don't understand, she has become an apologist for the Assad regime, and they have literally massacred civilians in prisons, in hospitals, and in refugee camps. That is just despicable, and it's sad, frankly.
Listen, Mike, you're not a fan of Saudi Arabia, but the choice is not Saudi Arabia or France. It's Saudi Arabia or Iran. There are a bunch of bad people in that neighborhood, and this is a relationship that's more functional. Lastly, when she brings up Yemen, she talks about they're supporting terror in Yemen. The Houthi rebels are not a humanitarian organization. They just killed 40 people yesterday, and they're supported by Iran. We should understand the choice here and stop making simplistic arguments. Michael Waltz, thanks for what you do.
Well, and also, you know, al-Qaeda's in Yemen, too. We can't forget that, and we have to keep up the pressure.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brian.
You got it. 23 minutes after.